Hey guys, this is a pre-recorded video. I have a couple of these coming out over the next few days. Unfortunately, we had a loss in our family, and I'm going to be leaving town with my parents and sister for a few days. Not for funeral plans or anything, but just to get away. So I wanted to put out some stuff for you guys in the meantime while I'm gone. On Friday night, I should be back. If not, I'll be at my desk. And so we're going to go over Justin Baldoni's deposition transcripts at that time. But right now, I want to go over something a little interesting that kind of flew under the radar. It's Justin Baldoni's interrogatory responses, which he's answering a bunch of questions that Blake Lively served on him. And there were a couple of things that he pointed out that I felt like were important to talk about. I'm also going to reference Blake Lively's response to their 56.1 statement, which says whether or not facts are disputed and why. The main points I want to go over have to do with the various content creators who have been covering this case, as well as the Vanzan lawsuit, which, as we know, is a lawsuit filed in New York State Court by Blake Lively's shell company Vanzan, which was used to obtain communications between Jennifer Abel and the other Wayfarer parties, which became the basis of Blake Lively's CRD complaint, the New York Times article, and this lawsuit. Because as we know, outside of what they possibly illegally obtained, there was really nothing for her to go on. It would have been he said, she said, except for the footage they actually have, which from what we've seen does not work out in her favor. So I'm going to go through a little bit of what he had to say in his responses to Blake's questions. Now the first voice crack. Now the first question and answer I want to go over is interrogatory number 10. So Blake's team asks, identify in reasonable detail all factual and legal bases for your contention that Ms. Lively has failed to mitigate damages she has incurred in paragraph 478 of your answer. And the answer to this question does mention something that pertains to my personal situation. Now, I've never met Blake Lively, never spoken to her. To my knowledge, I never really even interacted with her on social media. I used to be a casual fan, obviously before all this happened, yet she decided to subpoena me. I don't know what she thought she was going to get out of that other than trying to scare me out of talking about her because she didn't like the things I was saying or doing. That was my situation, as well as 106 other social media users and content creators, many of them not monetized or had single-digit subscribers at the time. So Justin Baldoni answers, responding party objects that this interrogatory seeks information subject to expert opinion and presumes that Lively has incurred damages and injuries which responding party denies. Without waiving these objections, responding party denies that Lively suffered any damages as a result of any act or omission of responding party or any other Wayfarer party. However, to the extent Lively is alleged to have suffered damages, including without limitation as a result of reputational harm, she has failed to mitigate such damages. In the first instance, Lively was the proximate cause of any harm or damages she seeks to recover. To the extent Lively can show any damages proximately caused by the Wayfarer parties or their efforts to diffuse the storm of negative press that Lively instigated against responding party and the Wayfarer parties, Lively failed to mitigate her damages by failing to seek or turning down other acting and directing opportunities and public appearances and promotional events for her brands. They're saying she did nothing to diffuse the storm of negative press. She also didn't seek or she turned down other opportunities and public appearances that would have mitigated the damage she alleges happened because of the smear campaign. Lively also acknowledges declining to work on projects at the same time as her husband to avoid being apart from one another, limiting the opportunities available to her. So just thinking from like an outside perspective involving people who are not Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, who I really don't like right now. I'm trying to think of this objectively as if it were any other like actress and her husband. You decided to work in an industry where you know it's going to take you away from home, possibly for months at a time. I mean, some people film overseas, for fuck's sake. So if you decide to go down that road, which is very lucrative, and it's not like she needs any more money. If she really wanted to turn down projects, she can, but then she can't claim that she didn't make enough money because, other people defamed her by defending themselves against her allegations. It's because she turned things down. So if she didn't want to work at the same time as Ryan, so she didn't want to be apart from one another, then that's on her. She limited her opportunities, therefore limited her income and her ability to promote her brands. And I can understand if we're thinking of not Blake and Ryan, and I'm trying to think objectively here, I can understand why that would be difficult. But at the end of the day, even thinking objectively from an emotionally removed standpoint where I'm thinking about, like, say, Scarlett Johansson and Colin Jost, two people I like. They chose to work in this industry, which comes with a lot of perks, the fame, the fortune, lots of opportunities that other people don't have. But unfortunately, that means when they're working and they're working in different places at different times, that's just something that you have to learn to live with as part of the lifestyle of an actress or an actor or somebody who works in show business in general. I recognize that it sucks to have to be away from your family sometimes, but that is what you chose. If you wanted to, if Blake wanted to, she could stay home, just work on her hair care line and stuff like that, and she wouldn't have to be away from home. But we all have to make choices, and people who work every day 9-to-5 jobs, we all have to make choices. A lot of the time that involves being away from our families. When I worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital, I didn't see people in my personal life for days and days and days at a time. It sucks, but that's part of the life that you chose. It's like this is a job that pays a lot more money than other jobs I could have gotten. There are costs and benefits to that, and then sometimes the costs are we don't get to see our families as much as we want to. It's up to you to decide if that's something that you want to do or not. Personally, I eventually left my job at the hospital. I now have a 9-to-5 job that, it pays less. I had to take a hit. I had to sacrifice something to get to have, that time with my family or traveling or being with friends that I couldn't have had if I kept the job that I had before, which paid a pretty good amount more. We all make sacrifices. So she's going to have to prove that her sacrifice to decline work so she could stay home with her family, while noble to many people, you have to prove that that's not what caused you to lose income. It was Justin Baldoni that caused you to lose income, and I think she's going to have a hard time doing that. So anyways, here we get to the good part. Lively further harmed her reputation since August 2024 by, among other things, 1. Her tone-deaf cross-promotional events, which created an association between her hair care and liquor brands and domestic violence. True, she even named a drink after the abuser in the film, Rally Wait. 2. Making provably false claims about the Wayfarer parties and exploiting the language of #MeToo in a manner that has undermined her credibility with the public. Very true. 3. Abusive legal tactics, including the initiation of a sham legal action through a shell company, Vanzan Incorporated, to launder stolen communications, as well as a scorched earth legal campaign to intimidate content creators and chill online criticism of Lively. And 4. Lively's exploitation of her power and influence to coordinate the publication of a one-sided New York Times hit piece. And I'm happy to see this here come out about Vanzan and about the Scorched Earth legal campaign, because discovery is over. All of the evidence is in possession of the parties. Blake Lively has submitted her very detailed response to Justin Baldoni's motion for judgment on the pleadings and his motion for summary judgment. And those subpoenas to 107 social media users, myself included, yielded no fucking evidence. Nothing that she could use in her favor, because there wasn't a smear campaign. Because as it turns out, everyday normal people who have to go through 9-to-5s and be away from their families and don't get to sue people for hundreds of millions of dollars because they don't want to take accountability for their choices and actions, they don't fucking like you. And if Blake wants that to change, she better do something to bring herself a little more down to earth so she can relate to the people she's getting criticism from, not blaming them saying they must be paid or they must be fake accounts. She's sitting here complaining about a hostile environment from women, going on talk shows saying she's a champion for women and girls' safety, all while trying to scare, manipulate, and control the voices of dozens and dozens of women. For what? Nothing. It didn't help her case at all. It wasn't relevant. She just wanted to hurt people who said things that hurt her feelings, rather than taking the time to look within and say, maybe these people are complaining about something that I could do better. Maybe these people are saying things that might be a little bit true, or at least come across as true. And as a public figure, I might need to do something about that. Instead of doing that, she tried to scare those people out of talking. She and her lawyers lied to the judge about meeting and conferring, implying that they had some sort of meeting with me, which they didn't. They refused. I got a couple of scheduling emails to which they refused to respond after I tried in good faith to make that work. They forced my hand to take time away from work and my family and the things that I have in my life that I have obligations to do. And I had to stay up into the dead of night writing something to a federal judge to tell him she has no basis for trying to get my location data, for trying to get my financial information, for trying to get my login information, my personal details. She has no right. She interfered with my and dozens of women's lives who don't have the financial resources that she has, who don't have the connections that she has. She did that just to punish us. And you can obviously see why she picked some people and not others. She picked the people she thought she could scare the most. And it didn't work, because as soon as she found out that some of us were going to fight back on that, she withdrew. Not only that, but she tried to pretend that they went through the legal process in good faith. They tried to pretend that we were named on some list by one of the publicists, one of the PR companies, the crisis PR companies, TAG, tried to pretend that we were in this list that was designated attorneys' eyes only, and that's why they couldn't meet and confer with us. But the truth is, they didn't have anything to say to us because they had no reasonable basis to ask for the things they were asking for. They were abusing the courts. They were abusing other women online who said things that they didn't like to chill them out of their free speech. And they thought they could get away with it because they thought TAG, the PR company, wants to protect, their business. They want to act in their own interest. They want to protect their business by not sharing all this information and not outing everyone who was actually on the list of people they had talked to, which, by the way, doesn't mean anything nefarious happened. All PR companies talk to media sources, and they had their bluff called. And as soon as they had their bluff called, the judge unsealed that list. And how many people of the 107 social media users that she subpoenaed were on it? One. It was an absolute abuse of the court system, and she should be ashamed of herself. Because Blake Lively is not a champion for women's rights and safety. She's the thing that women have to be afraid of. She's the one who's going to ruin our systems for actual victims. She's the one who's going to make sure that other people aren't believed after they go through horrible things. And she's the one who's trying to make private citizens feel unsafe. And if you think that's Justin Baldoni's fault, it's because you don't support women. You support Blake. You support the rich woman on top of the world who could have anything she wants, who's trying desperately not to take accountability for her own actions for the first time in her life. But you don't support all women. The women who have had their privacy violated or who have faced threats of such. Because if the roles were reversed and Justin Baldoni was trying to subpoena the private location data and bank account information, including the people that you share a bank account with, your family's information, among other crazy things like login information and all kinds of things. If Justin Baldoni did that to dozens and dozens of women, over 100 creators, you better believe that the women who now try to pretend it's not an issue would be fucking outraged. Because when you use your brain, every single regular American who's not a rich person who gets to abuse the legal system to scare people who don't have the money to fight back, they know it's wrong. Let's look at number 8 here. Identify in reasonable detail all factual and legal bases for your contention that the criticism against Miss Lively on tabloid and mainstream media during and after August 2024 was entirely organic. Here's Justin's response. Responding party objects that this interrogatory 1 is vague and ambiguous, 2 seeks information subject to expert opinion, 3 is duplicative of 7, and 4 seeks information protected by the attorney-client privilege and the attorney work product doctrine. Colleen Hoover's highly successful novel, It Ends With Us, Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds, and the film have all been the subject of extraordinary public interest. Although negative coverage of Lively began with news of her casting and continued due to paparazzi photographs of her character's wardrobe chosen by Lively herself, rumors of discord between Responding Party, the film's lead actor and director, and Lively on the set heightened media interest in, and somewhat prior to August 2024, driven in large measure by Lively and certain cast members' mass unfollowing of Baldoni on social media, and Responding Party's conspicuous absence from the film's marketing and publicity events, as well as gossip regarding Lively's efforts to wrest creative control of the film from Heath, Responding Party, Justin, and Wayfarer. In response to public interest, the media began to report about 1, a poorly conceived and tone-deaf marketing campaign for the film spearheaded by Lively in coordination with Maximum Effort and its principal, Ryan Reynolds. 2, Lively's promotion of a film about domestic violence with her hair care and alcohol brands. 3, Lively's alcohol brand's sponsorship of an official promotional event, and decision to name a signature cocktail after the film's male lead, a domestic abuser. 4, Lively's conspicuous refusal to take photos or do press with Justin and her exclusion of Justin from promotional appearances, international premieres, panel appearances, and screenings. 5, Lively's campaign to alienate the film's cast and crew from Justin, including the orchestration of their mass unfollowing of Justin's social media accounts. Lively's pointed failure to meaningfully engage with the film's serious subject matter and emphasis of levity in her promotional appearances, interviews, and social media posts. And 7, Lively's myriad of bizarre and/or off-putting public appearances leading up to the film's release. Lively further fueled the negative press by feeding information to the New York Times and other media outlets in advance of the filing of her complaint, which she provided, along with inflammatory text messages to the New York Times well prior to the complaint's filing. Criticism of Lively escalated when litigation commenced following her multi-month coordination with the New York Times to launder stolen private communications and peddle a false narrative in order to, in Justin's view, resuscitate her tarnished public image at the Wayfair party's expense. Through the New York Times article, Lively stirred up significant public interest in her allegations against the Wayfair parties. Lively's strategy backfired when the factual basis of her allegations started to unravel and the real story emerged, painting a highly negative picture of Lively and her cohorts. That negative public image has only been heightened by the unrelenting public relation tactics of Lively's legal team, which has cynically exploited and thereby diluted the language of domestic violence survivorship, for example, DARVO, and engaged in a concerted abuse of subpoena power to intimidate internet influencers and chill public criticism of Lively. These factors and conduct by Lively and her agents organically created a climate of negative public sentiment against Lively, which spurred the media and internet users to dig up and recirculate unflattering content concerning her behaviors from years past. This has all been covered extensively in the tabloid and mainstream media. So I'm not going to go through that whole document right now. Like I said, this is a pre-recorded video, so we'll go over it more Friday night. But there's one part of her response to their 56.1 statement that I do want to point out, just because I feel it's important in the context of what we just read about her scorched earth tactics against content creators. And this is pretty straightforward, but for context, most people who follow this are familiar with Shasti Flaw. She was the reporter who put out the video of Blake Lively making the little bump comment. Blake Lively was pregnant at the time during their interview. Shasti said, "Congrats on your little bump," congratulating her on the baby that was to come. And she said to Shasti, who was not pregnant, "Congrats on your little bump." And a lot of people didn't like that. Now, Shasti, who conducted this interview, obviously put this out on her own when she started to see stuff in the press about Blake Lively, saying, "I have some experience with her and she's not so great." I'm totally paraphrasing. Those were not Shasti's exact words. Obviously, she has her own channel you can go follow to hear more about her kind of story behind all of that. But there was nothing to suggest that the interaction between them wasn't organic and her sharing of the video wasn't organic. So Shasti was one of the social media users who was subpoenaed. Keep that in mind as we read what Blake has to say here. Blake Lively has not put forward any evidence to suggest the little bump video is not genuine or that defendants, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Wayfair, had any contact with the reporter in the video. And Shasti has been pretty relentlessly attacked at times, which is, especially hypocritical from other women I've seen who have, pointed this out. She's been attacked from people who think that she did this at the Wayfair party's request, as if they would even know that interview existed before Shasti published it. So what is Blake Lively's response to that after discovery and after all of the evidence has been revealed to them? Lively has not put forward any evidence to suggest the little bump video is not genuine or that defendants had any contact with the reporter in the video, the reporter Shasti Flaw. Undisputed. Undisputed. And in the case of Shasti, who they named in the New York Times and blasted online, she did it for nothing. Nothing other than to punish women who had criticized her reputation as a public figure, as someone they believed was doing injustice, or just misbehaving, or they just didn't like who she was in general, and they're allowed to express that. Like I said, I'll be back Friday nights to go over Justin Baldoni's deposition. Maybe we'll go over a little bit more of these documents that I just showed you guys, but I just wanted to get something out there pre-recorded before I leave town. So thanks everyone for watching. See you all soon.